What if I told you silence is the sharpest weapon you'll ever hold? Not anger, not revenge, just silence. And when you use it, you'll watch masks slip and egos collapse. They expect your reaction. They feed on it. But the moment you withhold it, their voice shakes, their pride cracks, and their power begins to rot from the inside. Power isn't loud. It isn't in shouting matches or clever comebacks. Real power is quiet. It's the confidence to stay still while chaos tries to drag you into its storm. Ignore them and watch their mask crack. You want the truth, not the sweetened version people sell you, but the raw kind, the kind that stings like fire. Here it is. People who survive on your reactions can't breathe when faced with your silence. The very second you stop feeding them attention, their voice begins to tremble. Their smile twitches at the edges, and the pride they wear like armor leaks through its seams. That's not magic. It's psychology. Real power doesn't live in yelling or clapping back. It lives in restraint. It's the unshakable confidence to remain still while chaos begs you to dance. When you ignore them, you strip away their only fuel, your attention. Without it, insecurity surfaces, control fractures, and guilt creeps in. They don't rise to meet you. They sink into the truth they've been hiding all along. This isn't passivity. This is emotional intelligence in motion. This is psychological boundaries being enforced. This is self-worth choosing peace over performance. You're not playing hard to get. You're simply hard to move. You decide where your time flows, who gets your focus, and what deserves your voice. And the truth is, most won't qualify. That isn't cruelty. That's clarity. In this video, I'll reveal why ignoring someone makes their weaknesses rise to the surface, and how you can use that truth without bitterness. We'll explore the mechanics of attention, practice one-line scripts that close doors with grace, and build a mindset that keeps you unshakable. No drama, no long speeches. Just calibrated silence that exposes what noise always tries to cover up. If you're ready to stop reacting and start observing, drop a 1 in the comments. Because from this moment forward, we no longer chase validation. We don't argue for our worth. We stand in quiet confidence, and we let time do the talking. Silence is not empty. It is not weakness. It is pressure. Pressure that forces the truth out of anyone who cannot handle the weight of their own reflection. When you strip away excuses, arguments, and noise, all that remains is raw exposure. And most people, especially those who thrive on manipulation, cannot survive in that space. Think about it. When someone insults you, they expect a fight. They bait you into a game they know how to play. They want your voice raised, your anger visible, your body tense. Why? Because your reaction tells them 2 things. First, that they got under your skin. Second, that they still hold control over you. But silence breaks that cycle. It is the refusal to step into the arena. It says, without a single word, you don't matter enough to deserve my energy. And that message, delivered without a syllable, is more devastating than any clever comeback you could invent. Psychologists call this response extinction. A behavior fueled by attention begins to wither when ignored. Like a fire deprived of oxygen, it slowly suffocates. The person pushing your buttons needs you to keep the flames alive. Without you, they're forced to face their own emptiness. And silence doesn't just starve them. It creates uncertainty. The human brain despises unanswered questions. When you ignore someone, they spiral into their own doubts. Why didn't he respond? Did I lose my power? Am I not important anymore? That insecurity plays like a broken record in their mind over and over again. And that's the thing. Every second you stay silent, its power multiplies. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Understand this, and you will uncover real strength." That is what silence truly is. Strength turned inward. It is mastery over yourself, over the burning urge to clap back, to prove your worth, to win an argument that was never worth fighting in the first place. But make no mistake, silence is not passivity. This is not about letting others trample over you. It's about owning the battlefield without even lifting a sword. Think of a lion. Does it roar at every small bird that dares to chirp? No. It saves its roar, its energy, for battles that truly matter. The same applies to you. Every word you speak is energy. Every reaction you give is fuel. So pause and ask yourself, why should I waste that fuel? Why spend it on someone whose only goal is to drain me? When you hold back, you flip the script entirely. They were expecting a show, maybe even a spectacle. But what they get instead is a mirror held up to their own face. And mirrors are cruel to the insecure. Suddenly their laughter rings hollow. Their insults lose their rhythm. Their pride begins to leak through cracks they tried so desperately to seal. You don't need to humiliate them. Their own reflection does that job far better. There's also a deeper truth here. Silence is a guardian of your peace. Emotional intelligence isn't about always having the perfect comeback. It's about recognizing which answers don't even deserve to be given. By staying silent, you protect your self-worth. You remind yourself, my value isn't up for debate. I don't need to defend it. That realization alone is freedom. Now let's get practical. I call this the 24-hour no-response protocol. When someone provokes you through a text, a cutting comment, or even a blatant insult, you do not respond for 24 hours. Not a word, not an emoji, not even a sigh. You simply sit with the urge. You watch it rise, peak, and eventually fall, like a wave breaking on the shore. And once the wave passes, you'll see clearly, most of what felt urgent wasn't worth your time at all. Try it once, and you'll feel the power shift. The first few hours may feel unbearable. You'll want to defend yourself, explain, prove your side. But that's just the ego begging for attention. When you break that cycle, you realize how much control you've been giving away. And the moment you stop giving it, you finally take it back. Let me give you a picture. Imagine your coworker makes a sarcastic remark in front of the whole room. The natural instinct? Fire back, defend yourself, maybe even humiliate them just to save face. But instead, you pause. You breathe. You don't even change your expression. And what happens? The silence lingers in the air like a heavy weight. Everyone feels it. The coworker expected a fight, but instead received indifference. Suddenly, they're the one exposed. They look petty. They look small. And you look untouchable. This isn't theory. This is psychological warfare. And the beauty of it is, you don't have to fight dirty. You don't have to descend to their level. You simply refuse to play their game. Seneca once wrote, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable." Silence is the practical form of that power. It is how you remain unconquerable when provoked. But let's be clear, silence is not a weapon for manipulation. You don't ignore people to inflate your ego or to play mind games. You choose silence because you refuse to let toxic energy rent space inside your mind. There's a difference between punishment and boundaries. What we are practicing here is the latter. Boundaries that protect your inner peace. The first law of silence couldn't be clearer. Do not react. Let them cast their stones. Let them run their mouths dry. You just stand still. Because the more you ignore, the more they unravel. The more they reveal weaknesses they've been trying to hide. And once you witness this in real time, someone crumbling simply because you stopped caring, you'll never see conflict the same way again. You'll realize something powerful. The fight was never truly with them. It was always within yourself. And the moment you master silence, you've already won. If silence is pressure, then attention is currency. Every second you give someone is like a deposit into their account. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't deserve your deposits. They are already bankrupt in self-respect, overdrawn in emotional intelligence. Yet they still demand interest from your focus. Just think about how the world operates today. Social media, gossip, toxic relationships, they all thrive on the same fuel, your attention. They poke, they provoke, they bait you. Not because they're strong, but because they're starving without your acknowledgement. For the insecure, invisibility feels like death, and every time you respond, even in anger, you're paying them. A sarcastic text? Payment. An angry rant? Payment. Even explaining yourself again and again? That too is payment. With each reaction, you show them they still matter enough to move you. And once they realize that, they own you. But when you withdraw, when you stop funding their game, the entire economy collapses. Their insults lose value. Their threats echo as empty noise. Their games no longer yield profit, because the only way they stayed afloat was by siphoning your attention. And now, you've closed the account. That's why silence feels so brutal to those who crave control. They don't just want to be right, they want to be relevant. And relevance only exists when you look at them, think about them, or engage with them. Take that away, and you've performed the ultimate act of psychological boundaries. You've declared my attention is mine to spend, and I choose not to spend it on you. Now here's the paradox. People confuse noise with power. They think the loudest voice, the most frequent post, the constant demand for attention equals victory. But in truth, those who beg for validation are bleeding out inside. Every desperate action proves they lack self-worth, because real worth never begs. It never chases. It never performs just to be noticed. Ask yourself, when was the last time you saw a truly powerful person wasting energy arguing with critics in the comments? When was the last time a lion stopped to explain itself to a barking dog? Exactly, never. Because true power doesn't collapse under silence. It doesn't even need applause. Only the insecure crumble without noise. And this is where emotional intelligence separates you from them. It teaches you a vital truth. Your focus is finite, and where you place it determines the quality of your life. Spend it on chaos and you'll live in chaos. Spend it on peace and peace will follow you wherever you go. Spend it on your craft, your health, your vision, and suddenly, you're living with a high-performance mindset that most people can't even comprehend. Here's a practice to try. I call it the attention audit. For the next 7 days, track where your mental energy flows. Every time you catch yourself replaying an insult, building a fake argument in your head, or obsessively checking if someone texted back, write it down. At the end of the day, review the tally. The results might surprise you, and when you begin to track your attention like this, you'll be shocked at how much wealth you've been giving away for free. Wealth that should have been invested in yourself. Now it's time to flip the script. Choose 3 areas where your attention will go instead. It could be physical training to strengthen your body, building a new skill that sharpens your mind, or journaling for clarity to steady your emotions. Treat your focus like money. Invest it in assets that grow, not liabilities that drain. Because here's the hidden truth. Attention compounds, just like money. Where you invest it, it multiplies over time. Pour your energy into self-discipline for 30 days, and you'll notice your body stronger, your habits sharper, your mind calmer. Invest your focus into your craft for 6 months, and doors begin to open that once felt locked shut. That is the essence of a high-performance mindset. You stop being distracted by noise and start creating real value in silence. Let me give you a real-world example. Imagine walking into a meeting, and a colleague slips in a subtle jab. They expect you to bite back, to defend yourself, to waste your attention proving your worth in front of everyone. But instead, you stay calm. You don't flinch. You redirect the entire conversation back to the project at hand. Who looks stronger now? Not them. Their words vanish into thin air. Everyone in the room notices. They tried to pull you into their drama, and you refuse to pay the price. Your silence, your composure, your redirection earned you respect without a single wasted breath. That is the paradox of silence. On the surface, it looks like nothing. But in reality, it accomplishes everything. It drains the weak, yet it strengthens the disciplined. And here's the painful truth. Most people fail this test. They spend attention recklessly. They respond to every critic. They defend themselves to people who were never listening. They explain their worth to those who never cared. And in the process, they bankrupt their energy. Don't be that person. Don't spend your life paying debts to people who never deserved your wealth. Instead, think like an investor. Guard your attention. Spend it only where the return is guaranteed, on growth, peace, and purpose. Because once you master that, you discover something liberating. You don't need revenge. You don't need validation. You don't even need closure. The greatest revenge is simply refusing to fund their relevance. And so the second law of silence is this: attention is currency. Don't pay the undeserving. Let your focus become rare. Let your reactions be scarce. Let your energy remain priceless. Because when you stop handing out your attention, people quickly reveal just how weak they are without it. And you, calm, centered, unbothered, reveal just how powerful you've become. Here's a brutal truth about human nature. People who thrive on control cannot survive in silence. They need to hear your voice, to see your anger, to feel your attention. Without it, they begin to crumble. And the longer you ignore them, the faster their weaknesses rise to the surface. Why does this happen? Because the mask they wear, the tough talk, the fake confidence, the constant noise, is fragile. It was designed to fool an audience, not to withstand silence. Silence is a mirror. It reflects their true self back to them. And for insecure people, that reflection is unbearable. Here's how it plays out. At first, when you stop reacting, they laugh. They shrug it off. They'll call you cold, detached, maybe even arrogant. But underneath, their pride is bleeding. They rely on your reaction to confirm their importance. Without it, they begin to ask themselves dangerous questions. Why isn't he responding? Why doesn't she care? Do I even matter anymore? Those questions gnaw at their confidence like acid. This is called cognitive dissonance, the deep psychological discomfort people feel when their expectations collide with reality. And this is why silence cuts deeper than words, because it pulls away the one thing they depend on most, your reaction. They expect you to break down, to beg, to lash out in anger. But instead, you remain calm. You remain unmoved. And in that stillness, the world they've built in their mind begins to collapse. Picture it like a house of cards. From a distance, it looks tall, balanced, even impressive. But take away just one fragile piece, the validation of your reaction, and the entire structure collapses in slow motion. That's why ignoring someone feels so powerful. You didn't shove the house down. You simply refused to play their game, and gravity did the rest. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. Epictetus taught, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When you withhold your reaction, you shift the balance of power. You stop being the puppet, and suddenly they are the one dancing to invisible strings, the strings of their own insecurity. Let me give you an example. Imagine a toxic ex sends a baiting text. "I guess you've already replaced me." The old version of you might fire back, defending yourself, explaining, maybe even arguing. And that reaction, it would hand them fuel. But when you don't respond, when you leave the message unanswered, something remarkable happens. The next message comes quicker. It's sharper, more desperate. Then another and another. Your silence drives them restless. Each unanswered word is a reminder of their fading relevance. Their pride begins to crumble into panic. And here's what you must remember. People always reveal their true selves under pressure. And silence creates that pressure. A confident person stays grounded when ignored. They don't chase. They don't spiral. They don't panic because their worth is rooted internally. But a weak person, they unravel in real time. Their insults turn shaky. Their threats sound hollow. Their confidence decays before your very eyes. This is why ignoring is never passive. It's an active discipline. It's emotional intelligence in motion. You're choosing not to spend energy where there will be no return. You're setting psychological boundaries that declare, your noise does not qualify for my attention. And the beauty of it? You don't need to humiliate them. You don't need to argue. You don't even need revenge. You just let silence do the heavy lifting. Because silence always reveals. It reveals who is secure and who is desperate. Who is authentic and who is only pretending. Who is strong enough to stand alone and who needs an audience just to survive. But let me warn you, when you first begin to ignore, they won't go quietly. They will push harder. They will poke, prod, scream louder. Why? Because desperation always peaks right before collapse. This is the moment where you must hold the line. If you break, if you respond, you reward their desperation. But if you remain silent, you push them straight into the collapse they've been running from all along. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That is the essence of ignoring. You cannot control what others say or do, but you can always control your response. And sometimes, the refusal to respond is the most powerful response of all. So why do they crumble when ignored? Because silence starves them. It deprives them of validation. It exposes their insecurity. It forces them to face themselves without the mask. And most importantly, it proves the truth. They were never in control. You were. That's why the third law of silence is this: ignore long enough, and pride turns into panic. You don't need revenge. You don't need to fight. Just stay calm, stay silent, and watch the cracks spread. Because the more you ignore, the more they reveal their weaknesses. And once those cracks appear, the weaknesses you've uncovered begin to destroy them from within. But here's the truth. Silence by itself is powerful, yes, but silence without boundaries is fragile. It crumbles the moment you second-guess yourself, the instant you allow someone's noise to seep back into your peace. If you want your silence to truly work, if you want it to cut deeper than any word, you must pair it with boundaries. Boundaries are the walls that protect the fortress of your mind. Silence is not running away. It is not avoidance, and it is not some passive-aggressive game. Silence is deliberate. It is chosen, and it only becomes unshakable when guarded by discipline. That discipline is your boundary, the firm line that declares, access to me is earned, not demanded. Let's break this down. When you ignore someone toxic, you are not punishing them. You are protecting yourself. You are making a bold statement. My peace matters more than your chaos. But here's where most people fail. They go silent for a few days, maybe a week. And then the moment that person tosses out bait, an apology, a compliment, a fake act of concern, they respond. And just like that, the silence is shattered. The boundary was never real. Boundaries are what keep silence intact. Without them, silence is nothing more than a pause. With them, silence becomes a permanent stance. The Stoics understood this well. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And mastery always requires boundaries. You must decide ahead of time what access people are allowed to your energy. If someone lies, cheats, or disrespects you, your boundary is withdrawal, not negotiation, not debate. Withdrawal. Your silence is not weakness. It is the enforcement of that boundary. Picture this. Your phone buzzes at midnight. It's them, trying to drag you back into their drama. Without boundaries, you might pick up just to hear them out, just to see what they'll say. But with boundaries, you don't even glance twice. Your silence holds. That's not avoidance, that's sovereignty. And boundaries protect you from guilt, too. Because trust me, the moment you go quiet, they will try to weaponize guilt. They'll call you cold. They'll accuse you of running away, of being heartless, of overreacting. That is the manipulator's last weapon, guilt. And if you don't have boundaries, guilt will fracture your silence. You'll start explaining, justifying, defending yourself, and suddenly, you're right back in the cage you just escaped. But when your boundary is clear, I don't respond to disrespect, then silence becomes effortless. You don't explain. You don't justify. You don't argue, because your boundary is the explanation. This is psychological warfare at its sharpest. Most people play checkers with emotions, loud moves, obvious reactions. But you, with silence and boundaries, are playing chess. Every move you don't make is a checkmate waiting to happen. Because you're not trying to win them over, you're protecting the throne of your inner peace. Here's a practical example. Suppose you have a friend who only calls when they need something but never checks in otherwise. Without boundaries, you answer every time, hoping one day they'll appreciate you. But with boundaries, you don't pick up. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. If our bond exists only when you need me, then it isn't real. Your silence enforces that truth. Boundaries also redefine strength. Weak people believe strength is shouting the loudest. But real strength? It is saying nothing at all while standing firm. That's why silence paired with boundaries terrifies manipulators, because they suddenly realize they can't move you anymore. They can't reach you, and this is why boundaries matter, because without them, silence crumbles. With them, silence becomes a fortress. Their words hit a wall and bounce straight back. Marcus Aurelius said it best. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Your silence is living proof of that power. And your boundary? It is the shield that ensures no one can steal it. But here's the danger most people miss. Silence without boundaries can backfire. If you go quiet but secretly stalk their social media, reread old conversations, or wonder endlessly if they miss you, you're not silent. You're still chained. Boundaries are not just external walls. They are internal discipline. They're the voice inside you that says, I will not let them live rent-free in my head. And once you set that standard, silence transforms. It's no longer just the absence of sound. It becomes the presence of control. It becomes a statement louder than any scream. You no longer have access to me. So here is the fourth law of silence. Silence without boundaries is temporary. Silence with boundaries is permanent power. You don't owe anyone explanations. You don't owe them your voice. You don't even owe them your presence. What you owe, what you truly owe, is peace to yourself. And the moment you honor that truth, your silence stops being fragile. It becomes unbreakable. Indifference is one of the most misunderstood powers you can ever cultivate. To the insecure, indifference looks like arrogance. To manipulators, it feels like coldness. To the weak, it feels like rejection. But to the Stoic mind, indifference is freedom. So what does indifference really mean? It doesn't mean you stop caring about life. It doesn't mean you become numb. True indifference is clarity. It's choosing what actually deserves your energy and letting everything else starve in silence. It's the art of seeing clearly what is within your control and what is not, and then refusing to waste even a single breath on the things that don't matter. The Stoics called this apatheia, not apathy, but mastery over passions. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That is indifference. It is the discipline of looking at chaos, betrayal, and insult and saying, this does not touch me. This does not define me. Now let's add the psychology behind it. People who try to control you thrive on one thing, your reaction. They insult you because they want anger. They betray you because they want chaos. They disrespect you because they want proof they can break you. But indifference breaks the cycle. When you don't flinch, don't argue, don't even acknowledge their game, they lose. And worse for them, they expose themselves. Psychologists call this extinction. A behavior that isn't rewarded eventually dies. Toxic people are like gamblers at a slot machine. Every time you react, it's a payout that keeps them pulling the lever. But when the machine stops paying, frustration grows, desperation builds, and eventually, they quit. Your indifference makes their toxicity extinct. And this is why indifference is not weakness. It's strategy. It's strength disguised as calm. But it requires psychological boundaries strong enough to resist every bait, every guilt trip, every manipulation. Because trust me, when you first go cold, they will not leave quietly. They will press harder. They will try everything. Anger, pity, fake apologies, fake love, and this is exactly why manipulators panic, because they are starving, and silence starves them faster than anything else. Indifference, then, becomes the ultimate test of self-worth. When you remain indifferent to toxic voices, you are making a clear declaration. My value does not depend on your validation. That is inner peace. That is quiet confidence, and it terrifies manipulators because they cannot control someone who needs nothing from them. Think of a lion in the wild. Does it flinch at barking dogs? Does it waste its strength swiping at every insect? No. It walks calm and silent, not because it is blind, but because it knows exactly what it is. That is the psychology of indifference. When you truly know your worth, you don't need to prove it. You don't need to argue with those beneath it. You simply stand firm in your strength, and that alone unsettles the insecure. But here's the key. Indifference must be trained. It doesn't come naturally. We are wired to react, to defend, to explain ourselves. Yet explanations are chains. Every time you explain your worth to someone who has already disrespected it, you hand them control. Indifference is the act of cutting that chain. It says, I don't explain myself to the blind. And what happens next is almost beautiful. The same people who laughed at your silence, who mocked your detachment, suddenly begin to chase it. Why? Because mystery is magnetic. When you stop giving them your emotions, they start craving them. When you stop explaining, they start questioning. When you stop chasing, they begin collapsing. Your indifference flips the entire power dynamic. This is why the Stoics taught restraint. Seneca once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Indifference is exactly that. It is not fighting back with their weapons. It is rising above the battlefield altogether. While they scream for war, you remain untouchable. While they drown in their noise, you keep moving forward in silence. That is the high-performance mindset. Focused, disciplined, immune to distraction. So remember this, indifference is not the absence of feeling. It is the mastery of response. It is emotional intelligence forged into armor. It is the quiet storm that dismantles every manipulator, every false friend, every toxic ex who once thought they had control. And this brings us to the fifth law of silence. Indifference is the highest form of strength. When you stop reacting, stop defending, stop explaining, you rise above their world. And from that height, their games can no longer touch you. At first, silence may feel empty. You pull back, stop answering, stop explaining, and the void feels strange. You are tempted to fill it, tempted to break it with words. But here's the truth. If you endure that void long enough, silence transforms into power. It becomes the sharpest weapon you will ever carry. Why? Because silence shifts the balance of energy. Every relationship, every conflict, every betrayal runs on an exchange of energy. They speak, you respond. They insult, you defend. They push, you push back. That is the cycle. But when you go silent, you break the cycle. You cut off the fuel, and suddenly they are left exposed, burning out while you conserve every ounce of strength. Think of it like a chess game. The opponent keeps making moves, expecting you to counter. But you sit still, calm, unreadable. They begin to panic. They overextend. They expose their queen. And finally, they collapse under the weight of their own impatience. That is silence in action. It doesn't attack directly, but it forces mistakes. It forces people to reveal who they truly are. This is why the Stoics prized self-restraint. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And silence. Silence changes your estimate. This is where silence reveals its deepest truth. Because every insult, every bit of drama, every act of manipulation only has power if you feed it. When you refuse to feed it, it withers. Here's the psychology behind it. Human beings crave feedback. We want to know that we matter, that our words carry weight. That is why manipulators press your buttons. They want proof that they can still reach you. But silence denies them that proof. It's like shouting into a canyon and hearing no echo. At first, they expect the sound to bounce back, to reassure them that they're still being heard. But when the echo never comes, the silence begins to feel heavier than any argument. It forces them to face themselves, and for most people, that is unbearable. Psychologists call this self-reflection induced by silence. When you don't respond, you give them nothing to push against. And when there's no opponent to fight, they turn inward. Their pride begins to question itself. Their confidence trembles. Their carefully crafted mask slips. And here's the beauty. You didn't have to lift a single finger. But silence doesn't only weaken them, it strengthens you. Because every time you choose silence, you're building inner peace. You are reminding yourself, I don't need to react. I don't need to explain. I don't need to prove. That discipline hardens your self-worth. It sharpens your emotional intelligence. It reinforces your psychological boundaries. Think for a moment about how you feel after walking away from drama without saying a word. There is no regret, no wasted energy, just clarity. That is the essence of the high-performance mindset. Saving your energy for what truly matters, instead of burning it on people who never deserved it. Now, here's the paradox. To the untrained eye, silence looks like weakness. They'll say, "You're too quiet. You're avoiding conflict." But that's only because they don't understand what true strength really looks like. Real strength doesn't announce itself. Real strength doesn't beg for applause. Real strength is unshakable calm in the middle of chaos. That is what silence becomes when you master it. And here's the best part. Silence multiplies over time. The longer you hold it, the louder it becomes. At first they mock you, then they question you. Eventually they fear you. Because silence sends a message no words ever could. You are irrelevant to my peace. That is why silence is never just absence. It is presence. Presence of discipline. Presence of clarity. Presence of self-respect. It tells the world, I'm not here to play your games. I'm here to protect my soul. Remember this. Noise always demands attention. Power never does. Power is quiet. A lion doesn't need to roar every second. It walks in silence. And yet every creature feels its presence. That is the transformation you undergo when silence becomes power. You stop proving. You stop chasing. You stop performing. You simply exist. And that existence commands respect. So here is the sixth law of silence. Silence isn't just resistance. It is transformation. What begins as withdrawal becomes dominance. What begins as absence becomes presence. And what begins as restraint becomes unshakable power. Silence doesn't just protect you, it exposes them. It strips away their masks, their arrogance, their performance, until all that remains is the raw truth they've been trying so hard to hide. This is the secret you must never forget. Because once silence strips away the noise, weakness cannot survive in that exposure. Think about it. Anyone can look strong when the spotlight is on them. They can talk louder, act tougher, pretend they're untouchable. But take away the stage, remove your attention, and suddenly the cracks appear. Why? Because their strength was never real. It was borrowed. From your reaction, from the audience, from the energy you gave them. That's why silence is so lethal. It forces people into a confrontation not with you, but with themselves. And for the insecure, that's the battle they fear the most. Silence is a mirror. It reflects back every flaw they tried to bury, every insecurity they tried to mask, every truth they prayed no one would notice. Let me paint the picture. Imagine someone insults you in front of others. They're expecting fireworks. They want you to snap, to give them a fight, to feed their performance. But instead, you sit there calm, unmoved, unshaken. What happens first? They smirk. They think they've won. But then, the silence lingers, and something shifts. The room grows heavy. The crowd grows uncomfortable. Slowly, the attention turns. Not on you, but on them. Now they're the one under the microscope. Their laughter starts to sound forced. Their confidence begins to crack. And piece by piece, everyone sees the truth. The insult was never strength. It was insecurity in disguise. And silence revealed it. This is the essence of psychological boundaries. By refusing to react, you shift the weight of exposure back onto them. They wanted to put you on trial. Instead, they end up on trial themselves. And the jury? It isn't your words. It's their own conscience. Here's the psychology. People who thrive on conflict rely on external validation. They need proof they still matter, proof they can still pull your strings. But when you go silent, you strip away that validation. And what follows is a chain reaction. Deprivation breeds panic. Panic reveals insecurity. Insecurity exposes weakness. And silence is the spark that sets it all in motion. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Seneca wrote, "He who does wrong is the first to suffer, and silence makes that suffering visible." The more you ignore, the more they unravel, because their wrongs echo louder in the quiet. Their conscience turns against them. Their ego becomes their tormentor. Now let's talk about power. Real power never needs to perform. A lion doesn't need to prove it's a lion. The ocean doesn't need to prove it's deep. And a person who truly knows their worth never wastes energy arguing with those who don't. That's why your silence feels so dangerous to them. It proves you're not playing their game. You've risen above it. And from that higher ground, their weakness looks even smaller. Here's the irony. The louder they try to cover their weakness, the clearer it becomes. It's like someone screaming, "I'm not afraid," at the top of their lungs. The very volume of the claim exposes the fear. And when you remain silent, you amplify that exposure. Silence becomes a spotlight. It shines on every twitch, every crack, every contradiction. But here's the part you must remember. Silence only works if you stay disciplined. If you break too soon, if you give even a shred of reaction, you hand them back the mask. They'll laugh it off, pretend they've won, and slip right back into the role they rehearsed. But if you hold the line, if you remain quiet long enough, the mask disintegrates. And once it's gone, there's no hiding what lies beneath. This is why silence should never be mistaken for cowardice, because it isn't weakness at all, it is courage. It takes courage to let others reveal themselves. It takes courage to sit inside the tension, to resist the urge to defend your name, to allow time and truth to do the exposing for you. That is not passivity. That is spiritual discipline. That is the high-performance mindset in motion. It is the refusal to waste energy where weakness is already digging its own grave. So here we arrive at the seventh law of silence. Silence exposes weakness faster than confrontation ever could. Words give them space to argue. Silence gives them nothing but themselves. And for the insecure, that is the worst kind of prison, one with no escape. There comes a moment when silence evolves. It stops being a tactic. It stops being just a shield. It becomes who you are. It becomes your legacy. Because silence isn't only about ignoring the people who tried to break you. It is about rising into a version of yourself that no longer needs noise to prove anything. At first, silence feels like a weapon, something you aim outward at others. But as time passes, you realize it was never really about them. It was about you. About building emotional intelligence strong enough to endure betrayal. About drawing psychological boundaries firm enough to guard your worth. About finding an inner peace so unshakable that no insult, no rejection, no abandonment can disturb it. When silence becomes your legacy, you stop chasing validation. You stop begging people to see your worth. You stop performing for an audience that never clapped for you. And you finally understand something liberating. Their approval was never currency. It was a chain. By letting go of that chain, you free yourself. This is what the Stoics meant by ataraxia, calmness of the soul. Epictetus taught, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. In other words, let them misunderstand you. Let them mistake your silence for weakness, because their misunderstanding does not diminish your truth. Those who truly matter will feel your strength even when you say nothing. And here's the paradox. Silence is remembered longer than noise. People forget arguments. They forget angry words shouted in the heat of the moment. But they never forget the day you stopped responding. That moment burns into memory like a scar. In every quiet night, in every dull moment, in every shadow of regret, they will hear your silence echo louder than any speech. Silence doesn't only expose the past, it builds the future. While they remain stuck in ruins of drama, you are building in peace. You are reading, creating, training, evolving. That is the high-performance mindset, channeling every ounce of energy into growth instead of wasting it on people who never deserved it. And one day, when they hear of you again, it will not be through your words. It will be through your results. And nothing speaks louder than success earned in silence. But let's be clear, silence doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean shutting down forever. It means choosing wisely where your voice belongs. You give your words to those who respect them. You give your time to those who value it. You give your energy to those who nurture it. And everyone else? They get silence. That isn't cruelty. That's clarity. So think about legacy. What do you want to be remembered for? Endless arguments? Wasted battles? Or the unshakable calm of someone who truly knew their worth? People will not remember every word you said, but they will remember the presence you carried. The quiet, confidence, the discipline, and the strength you showed by refusing to break when others wanted you to. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Silence turns that wisdom into action. You don't explain goodness, you embody it. You don't explain strength, you live it. You don't explain peace, you radiate it. That is legacy. That is the mark silence leaves long after you're gone. Here's the final truth. When silence becomes your legacy, you no longer worry about enemies. You no longer care about those who tried to break you because they cannot reach you. They cannot touch you. They cannot even step into the space where you now exist. Their world is noise. Yours is peace. And peace is the highest form of dominance. So here is the eighth and final law of silence. When silence becomes your legacy, you no longer need to destroy them. You inspire yourself. Their weakness was exposed. Their power was shattered. But you walked away stronger. And that, my friend, is a legacy worth carrying. So here we are. 8 chapters, 1 truth. The more you ignore, the more they reveal their weaknesses. You've seen how silence exposes them, how indifference protects you, how boundaries give you strength, and how calm becomes your greatest weapon. But let's make one thing clear. This journey was never about them. It was never about enemies, betrayers, or manipulators. It was always about you, about becoming the version of yourself that chooses peace over drama, mastery over impulse, and growth over noise. Because at the end of the day, revenge is not destruction. Revenge is evolution. It is becoming so untouchable, so disciplined, so centered in your own power that the games of weak people can no longer reach you. Remember this. Your silence is not empty. It is full of answers. It is the language of self-worth, the proof of psychological boundaries, the sound of inner peace. When you rise in silence, you don't just protect yourself. You build a legacy that speaks louder than any scream. And when they look back, when regret finally haunts them, they'll realize the truth. You never needed to destroy them. You simply outgrew them. And that, my friend, is the most powerful ending of all. If this message touched you deeply, don't let it fade. Carry it with you. Subscribe to Life Through Stoicism for more lessons on silence, strength, and the philosophy that transforms pain into power. Drop a comment below. I choose silence over noise. Let the world know you're stepping fully into your strength, Because the storm that destroys the weak doesn't always roar. Sometimes it moves in silence. And now you are that storm.